possibly some ditch capacity issues on the north side because of all that water that sheet flows from the north across Owens Road. There could be some possible ditch maintenance issues and some possible outfall issues. And one little item that we're still waiting on is we're going to take a look at the TxDOT study that was done when they redid the interchange 290 and James Muse. We wanted to take a peek at that drainage study that was done for that and see if we could glean any idea of why the water wasn't outflowing correctly from that. And yes, sir.
And one of the things as we look at the research on Owens Road, when you see the zone AE, that's the flood zone.
Yes, sir.
But when you go to the north of 290 towards Owens Road, it makes no sense that this flood map started right at the freeway and just flowed so strong south.
That is correct.
Because the incidents we do have are water coming from the north, but for some reason they left all that off.
And they've designated it as Zone X. And in their minds, that is outside the 500-year floodplain.
Except when it...
Except in the past few events. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, so in terms of Ruby Street, right, you're saying that it is directly in that flood area.
Yes, sir.
So I've been by Ruby Street, and there are a lot of ditch issues where there's a lot of debris that's been collected over time. So even if we clean out that ditch, does that mean it's still going to be susceptible to?
It is extremely susceptible to flooding events. And no amount of ditch cleanup is going to help that. They live in a bowl.
Okay, Councilor Will.
Again, part of this is we paid maybe about 10. I think our cost share was anywhere from about $5,000 to $8,000. The city, all municipalities in Waller County put in because Waller County did a study studying the tributaries and this kind of mapping. I guess my two questions: one, is there a reason why you're only focused on Owens and Ruby instead of helping us to map out the entire city? Two, when we find out that these areas are in like a 500-year flood, but then we know specifically if you live here, Ruby Street is one of the areas that flood majority of whether it be a heavy rain or light rain. Is your firm gonna help us to be able to identify a flood mitigation plan? Is it going to help to be able to identify, because we've been having, part of this conversation is we've been having this conversation for a long time. What this map is showing us that people who built over there built into a flood area.
Not necessarily. They probably built there, from the looks of those houses, they were built before it was designated by the National Flood Insurance Program as the 100-year floodplain.
So does that, I guess the second part of my question, there was 290 that was put there.
Correct.
290 also has helped push water. Would this help us to be able to identify some of these things, to be able to help the citizens who live in that community be able to have a better understanding of what's going on? Or is this gonna, again, because regardless of what the maps say and who's at fault, the people who live over there who flood when it rains heavy, they're wanting some resolution. Will the study help us to be able to get to resolution to devise a plan, or will the study help us to just say what we know that it floods already over there?
We have not, go ahead, sir.
Let me answer part one.
Yeah.
Because then you'll get to where we're going, because that's picking up on Councilman Rowlands. The reason the Ruby Street Amaryllis area was selected was because we're a FEMA designated disaster area, 90%, 95% because of that particular area. So what Mr. Dribble did in preparing for our meeting was he did that background research and found these maps that give us some understanding of what we were dealing with. And then to go to that next step is what Councilman Rowland is talking about. I wanted you to come here, share with council and our residents where we are, and then you can tell us where we could potentially go.
Correct.
From a study standpoint. So go ahead, now you
So,
can answer the second question.
all that we did here was look to see the possible scope of the problem and if there was a project to be had. So we're not under contract yet to provide anything. We're just doing the scoping, doing some due diligence, and basically trying to figure out what the exact problem is so that we as engineers can help you solve it, right? And it takes a bit to kind of dig in and identify and be able to quantify what those problems are. Drainage issues are hard to quantify and intensely personal for the people they affect, and we get that. The second part of your question, there are things that FEMA has set aside, I guess, to help people who are in the floodplain. One of the solutions that we've talked about is maybe the home buyout program and helping guide the city through that paperwork and things of that nature. Just at first glance, I do not believe that you can improve your way out of that situation to take those homes out of the floodplain. Just at a 30,000 foot glance, what I'm seeing, it's not like we can dig a big old deep channel and pull everybody out of the floodplain. So the next step is what kind of mitigation efforts can you provide as the city for these residents who are feeling the pain of being flooded 3 times and probably more.
Hence that this study will help to, like, if one of the examples would be a retention pond or some sort of something to alleviate runoff.
Correct. We could give a host of mitigation options, right? And you would want to look at the areas that are hardest hit. And the 2 that the mayor had suggested were this area down here by Ruby Street and the like, and Owens Road. If you're talking county-wide or city-wide, that's a different scope of the problem. So we're really trying to help define what question do you want us to really answer?
One, how do you build? What's the cost? And 2, are we able to pull this money out of the FEMA Harvey, FEMA flood in the thing, and what Ms. Alexander and you have submitted for? So 1, are we able to devise this plan out of the monies from potential grants? And 2, how do you build to be able to put, what's the cost?
We don't know the cost yet, and that would be part of what we would provide in the options. And again, as engineers, if you give me
not on the cost, on the solution.
Right.
Cost on devising the plan.
We would have to scope that out. And again, it just depends on how big of a plan that you want. If you want just a little bitty drainage study just for Owens Road so it doesn't flood, that's a lot different than give me a comprehensive drainage study so nobody in the city of Prairie ever floods again. And as soon as we can, and that's part of the reason why we're having conversations and why we take a little time to really identify the problem so that we can price out the solution for you.
So one of the things that we may need to do, again, just in finding the depth of it, is to maybe have a town hall meeting so we could get some of the stakeholders who've been flooding in other areas, south of.
Correct.
Yeah, a workshop to have you come, and then you could get the information you need to be able to tell us what it might take to do what we're saying the problem might be.
That is correct.
What is the time frame? What is this? Can you briefly give us, like, what is the process? So you're saying you need to do the scope of work.
Right,
What's the
right.
time frame?
And that, again, that also depends. We've been talking with the mayor. If we're going to use federal funds to pay for this, then there's a selection process that has to happen. Just like you're selecting your county engineers, I'm sorry, county attorneys. And we want to be sensitive to that. And I would rather long-term do right by the city of Prairie View. So if there's federal money out there and there has to be a formal selection of engineers, then that's a process where we would all back up. And that's really what the mayor's getting here, is how do we make sure that this is done correctly, all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed, so that if we do go for those federal funds, they don't penalize you for just picking an engineer.
And one of the things too, in reference to the payment, FEMA shared with us, myself, Judge Alexander, Chief was there at a meeting in the Commissioner's Court, that if we pay for a study, we'd have to pay for the study initially, but if we did those things that the study recommended, then not only would they seek to help us pay for those things, they would also assist us with recouping our funds for the initial study. So again, Mr. Gribble and a few people I talked to, I just was impressed with. He said, well, let's get the information first. And he was willing to come to council and all that. Again, without a contract or any commitment, because of the ethics, and I respect and appreciate that. Councilman Wallace.
Yes, sir.
So, first of all, thank you for relaying this information to us.
You're welcome.
I do agree that there definitely needs to be a town hall or some workshop in which we bring those that are in those areas to explain the situation. Having that said, I was appointed a part of the flooding committee. So Mayor Allen, do you want me to work with Mr. Gribble to set up the town hall, or do you want to take that?
No.
I would caution against setting up a town hall at this point. I think you would want the engineer who you select to do this final study to actually do that. And that's why I'm saying let's back up. All we're doing is providing a little bit of information, and I want to make sure, I don't want to just take the project and, because that's not what we're about. Our firm's not about projects, it's about relationships. And so we want to make sure that you have all your I's dotted and T's crossed so you can get the maximum amount of federal reimbursement that you're eligible for.
Your firm wants to be included on actually doing the work in the bidding process. Your firm does not want to be the company that we pay to do the service to get us to the scope and RFP process, because there's two parts of the process. And so you're saying that you just gave us this teaser, we need to come back and devise another engineering firm or attorney to lay out the scope of work of what we're looking for that connects back with federal funds, and then go out to the RFP process like we did on the grant for Alta Vista with the 10 companies.
And I'm not saying that we would preclude ourselves from that. I'm just saying let's get all the information so to help you craft the RFQ so that it's fair, so that it meets the requirements of the federal guidelines, because federal money is going to be used.
Mr. Gribble, I thank you. I really appreciate it, because as has been noted, this has been a discussion, concern for a minute, and now we've got a sense of focus. We knew the area was flooding, no one really knew why.
Yeah.
And now we do.
And flooding is so deeply personal. It is like,
Yeah, we've had some people work very hard over in that side of town, so.
it's like somebody has come in and invaded your home, and we have a special place in our heart for people like that. So, thank you for your time.
And thank you for your time.
If you have other questions, the mayor has my contact information. And again, as we get more information on the TxDOT study, then we can kind of wrap things up and present it to you and see if you want to go forward.
So now you've got that initial information you mentioned regarding 290 or that study.
I do not have
Back,
that. Melvin Harris, our construction engineering and inspection director, he is still working. He worked with TxDOT. He has lots of relationships there. We're still trying to get our hands on that.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes, sir.
So we need to, is Councilman Wallace going to be the point on getting us to the scope of work, or is this something that will just kind of, how is that going to work moving forward?
I'll definitely look in, because I mean, as Mr. Gribble stated, like there may be other options in terms of trying to get grant money and whatnot. So I'll work with Mayor Allen to make sure that we get to that. I do feel though, because of those residents that have been hit over and over again, that we do need to whether it's give them a letter or some type of response saying that we are working diligently on this, because a lot of residents are not here right now, so they don't get to hear what Mr. Gribble. So just so that we continue to have communication between leadership and others, and I can work with Mayor Allen to get some type of correspondence with them.
On that note, while we're on the subject, let me go ahead and share, because I think this came in after our meeting. From the Texas General Land Office, George P. Bush Commissioner, Hurricane Harvey Disaster Recovery Fund applications. Dear Mayor Allen, congratulations, your community has been awarded Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds for Hurricane Harvey under the method of distribution created by your Regional Council of Governments, which I believe is where we're falling under the county umbrella. The local infrastructure for $742,000, $15.55. The Texas General Land Office is dedicated to assisting your community in the recovery process and would like to know whether you intend to apply for these CDBG DR funds, which we're already doing, by the way. Please notify the GLO of your community's decision to utilize these funds by November 30th, 2018, using the email below. The deadline for receipt, January 31, 2019. The GLO is dedicated to your success and grateful for your partnership. Mr. Nick Houston with Project Management we had the initial conversation a few months ago, and now they haven't been awarded yet, but we now have a formal award letter as to our portion, which we thought might be $740,000. So we do have that, and that's to assist those individuals that were hit hardest. Mm-hmm. There's another grant, and I'm waiting on the gentleman to get back with me, some other additional disaster recovery funds that we're trying to go after as well. Harvey broke all the rules, mm-hmm. and they've been throwing a lot of state and federal money for folks who were hit by it, so we're just trying to do everything we can for all of our folks who were impacted in the city. So it'll fit right along with what you're talking about, taking care of them. There's also buyout situations. We're going to be having meetings with them on as well. And the gentleman with the Texas Land Office that I met with a week ago, he's going to come out and agree to answer those questions so people get the information from the horse's mouth, so to speak, because some situations are worse than others, and I want them to have the best set of information available. Yes, sir, Councilman Rowley.
Since we don't have a city attorney, are we going to be, not a city attorney, city engineer, who would be helping us through this process? Are we going to look at bidding this work out to an engineer that can help us move through the process, or what is the reason why I ask is we have talked about 3 different high-level priority issues, and we don't have all the staff in place. And so many council members have stepped up to say that they will help be the lead as far as council working along with you with the mayor. But there's some professional services people that we need that we don't have, and so is the goal to be able to come back with because we're gonna need an engineer to help us set up the scope along with, we're gonna get the community piece, but there's some fundamental things that need to be set up that connects back to the award letter that you just gave us, or federally, that an engineer may be more connected to. So I guess my question is, are you going to update us on how you plan to move this project forward, or is it something that, when is that going to come back around to us?
Well, this particular project, Mr. Gribble has some additional information he's making us aware of. The project with taking care of the people that are over there doesn't require an engineer. These funds are going to be for buyouts, elevations, and because it's been designated now formally as a prior FEMA flood zone, my thought is to, now that we have this information, to bring it back to council, and we may want to take a look at, and I spoke with one of the Olson attorneys, we may want to take a look at prohibiting people from building in the area that prevents a problem, not just for them, but our first responders
Yes.
had to go in there in boats last time to save people. And if we know it's an area that's hazardous and continue to be hazardous, we don't want them or our first responders to put their lives at risk. So we may want to stop building in an area where, at least now, no one should be building in. But we do have, remember, Mr. Underwood, the engineer, that's at least was brought on a emergency basis while we're posting that out. So we have access to information when it comes time to make those decisions, of course, because you're right. But yeah, this is to me, Mr. Gribble's information was enlightening, but it also helped me to understand why the problem had been so pervasive over there. Now we just need to decide what we, as elected officials, are going to do to deal with that area, because FEMA also said, again, if we wind up, and we'll have to get with them to see how far that goes, but there are also engineering type issues that don't have to go out for bid, depending on what the situation is. So those are, again, my thing is, let me bring it to the council and then we divide it out or see where we want to go with it. But now we're starting to get some answers, and that, I think, is a major step in being able to make decisions and go forward. Yes, Councilman Jones.
So, if I'm getting this correctly, no money will be spent or given out until we come up with a plan, as in how we would like to move forward with these areas.
Well, other than this federal money or something like that, because that's controlled by them, but from,
Right.
say, from a hiring Mr. Gribble or someone to do something, absolutely, it has to come back for council approval.
Each bucket of federal money has a lot of regulations attached to it.
Yeah, so with the elevation or buyout, which is, 742,000, which we received, that won't be given out unless we got a plan that's in place. What we like to do next.
Well, I think you need to,
Well, the gentleman from the Texas Land Office, Mr. Baum, Trey Baum, he'll be coming, and we talked, I think we had a tentative date of mid-next month, and I'll make sure we get that to you, because he was checking his schedule and I think checking with someone else. But we're gonna have someone from there who's disseminating the funds to come and share with us, and more importantly, our impacted residents, what their options are, because they're the ones that really qualify for the money. What we may be making decisions on from a FEMA standpoint is, do we want FEMA to undertake a buyout program, and then everything is bought out will have to be leveled like it didn't exist? And then we might go park status or something like that. But again, now that it's certified, it's so far in the river that it wasn't even on the map you and I looked at.
correct.
So yeah, but again, we're gonna bring that back to the community and let the people from the state explain to us what that is, how that works, and who's qualified for what, and what it takes for them to obtain the funds that they deserve based on what they went through.
Correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Whipple? Sir, thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
You shed light on a headache.
Do you have a number or email? We can get that card.
Just pass one. I get a nickel for everyone as a handout.
So get you as many nickels as you can.
All right. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I guess I'll wait to ask my questions after you pass out the report.
Okay. Is Ms. Balda here? I think she has to be on the agenda. I don't see her. Okay. Item 1, discuss, consider, and take action on the process to adopt a moratorium on development permits for areas determined to be FEMA buyout eligible due to recurrent flooding. That's language came from the attorney. We touched on it, but we can wait till we have more information. I just wanted to put it on the agenda and get it in front of council.
Right, and all the information you're hearing tonight is essential to the moratorium. What's wrong, what needs to be put in its place before and you have 2 public hearings that you're going to have to go through.
Okay.
But you can't have the public hearings until you know more
What your options
information.
are.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So we're
this
going,
is kind of FYI, if you will.
so we're going to get more information specifically on the process of the moratoriums and then what areas or neighborhoods will be affected, correct?
That's correct, and you have to identify the area and the improvements that are needed. And so your new city attorney can help you through that process.
And the Texas General Land Office person, we're trying to get out of this, dude.
No, sir, I just don't want to take
I
on
know.
something that Mr. Zeck wants to do a different way.
Sure. He's just getting more
However.
ready, okay. But no, and I believe from our meeting, the gentleman from the gentleman from the Texas General Land Office will let us know some of what those options are. If we do this, then this has to happen, or that sort of thing, so.
Do we have one that's a plan of, like, we're gonna get that to be on the next agenda, we're gonna get that to be able to look at that?
We're trying to set up a meeting for him, and then we'll put that community workshop, town hall, whatever it needs to be. Once he confirms that date, I'll get it to council, and then we'll look to get it to the community, and especially make sure all of those who are impacted, we got a lot of those phone numbers and names. Item 2.
And so this, this is connected to this right here. The from the GLO, the
Yes.
local infrastructure.
Yes.
Before we move, I will identify where we're gonna put the $742,000 in this. Because part of the process is we gotta have I know we gotta have the memorandums first, we gotta have the public meetings, but we should have identified where the $742,000 is gonna go. We'll have that, and we're gonna get that before we move forward, correct?
Well, that's going to come from the public workshop from the Texas General Land Office, because they're going to tell us how that money can be spent. Yes.
And
That will
then
be
we'll
their
come
job.
back, we'll come back and devise where we want it to go specifically in that area. Because they have more, you have more options. Your money could be used for buyout, it could be used to elevation, so we could say portion can go here, portion can go here. I'm just simply asking, once we meet with the GLO, we'll get some more specifics on how we move forward. The citizens will be updated on what's going on before we spend any money.
Oh, yeah, no, they're going to tell us if and how it can be spent. That's their job.
Which that was like my previous question, because even though that area does flood, some family members over there do not want to be bought out. So I think we should have a strategic plan, or be allowed to come up with a strategic plan due to Dante being part of that committee for those citizens over there, because the first option that's buyout as it is on the agenda, that doesn't fit too many of those citizens.
Well, the majority of them have already moved out. The majority of them are gone, the houses are vacant. But again, what happens when someone doesn't want to be bought out? Texas General Land Office is going to tell us how all that works. And what, if anything, we can do, because again, this is their money, so they're going to tell us how it can be used. And we can access it and how. Item 2, discuss, consider, and take action on the zip code committee. Councilman Wallace.
So I went to Commissioner's Court on Wednesday, and we talked about a lot of the issues in terms of the ruling redress, and how a lot of different parts of the city are under Hempstead and Waller, even though it's clearly in the city of Prairie. So I talked to County Judge Duhan, and he said he'd be willing to create a committee together so that we all can come to the table once again and try to discuss how to move forward with the county, the postal code, and other entities. And Councilman Jones was there with me when he said that. So there's not really any action on it. I'm waiting to get into more conversation with Judge Duhan so that we can have some type of initial meeting and know who can come to the table to help remedy that problem.
So you want to list this as FYI as well?
Yes.
Like I did before? Yes, Councilman.
So just for informational purposes, we did have a zip code committee, I guess about a year and a half ago, and they went through the entire process of what it takes for us to actually apply for the zip code. But of course, they weren't able to move forward with the process because we hadn't reached that 10-year window. So my recommendation would be, if we're going to recreate the zip code committee, we should have those same people who have already done that work. They've already, like I said, they went through the entire process. They understood exactly what needed to be done. They got the surveys done, and they had already received the like letters from state reps, from the county judge. They had the packet completed, just ready to submit it. And so I'm sure they still have all of the information.
So is there,
And the point is well taken, because that committee has not been disbanded, so it's still inactive.
so is there like a list of who's on that committee, just because since it hasn't been, okay, so we can reach back out to people?
I think
Yes.
part of and I support the work of that committee and support this work of like Prairie zip code issue. I think there's a difference in philosophy. Many of us know that that 77446 belongs to the post office. The committee, I don't know if the committee was recommending that we have another zip code, and I don't know if we apply for more than one zip code, because if you've been here long enough, you know that, again, the reason why, coming back to the voting issue, that they're making it say Waller and Hempstead again, is because the zip codes split down the middle of the city. And so we have to figure out our strategy moving forward if we're going to continue to fight for 77446, or just like in any other cities that's developed, many cities have more than one zip code. Why is Prairie only bound to one zip code? And our issue we may need to broaden the scope of what we're looking at, to say, hey, we may need to have more than one zip code because the 77446 is tying us to the post office, or changing our boundaries. And I think that's what the committee recommended. I just think that we all should either receive a copy of their report so we can all look at it and allow that committee to do the work, but also, before the deal that was worked some 20 years ago is we were allowed to use Prairie View and the zip code. And now that you have some new people who are in these positions because of, HGAC is the one who pays for the person who does the rule addressing that answers to the county judge, Mr. Duhan. This person is now, remember about a year ago, Waller County then assigned us addresses that were different than the addresses that many citizens had in Prairie View. So we went through changing up some of the numbers. We have the 911 rule addressing, but that money, that they're paid for by HGAC, and they report to the county judge. What we need to decide on, how do we plan to move forward about opening that up, because when they changed it, it's now that this deal that was struck 20 years ago that allowed you to be able to put Prairie View and your zip code, it's either Prairie View and then you could put 77445, or you can put 77448. I think they're saying that is no good.